I look at inspiration like Netflix and Spotify and Amazon, and Netflix knows what you're going to watch tonight, even though you don't know that, and Amazon knows what you're going to buy, even though you haven't looked at that product yet. And no one looks at those companies as great brands necessarily. They don't say their logos are great, their social media presence is great. No one knows what their taglines are. They win with great data and great customer profiles. And our objective is to bring that same capability to other organizations.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport, a podcast created for and by marketing professionals who seek to better understand their consumers and design unique, personalized experiences that stand out in today's market. In each episode, hosts from Verisk Marketing Solutions connect you to industry thought leaders, practitioners, and experts focused on improving B2C experiences through powerful data-driven insights. It's about how we connect with our consumers and where we can partner together to do it better. This is the Marketing Rapport.
Welcome to the Marketing Rapport. I'm Tim Finnigan, Head of Product Marketing at Verisk Marketing Solutions, where we focus on consumer data and insights for marketers. In this episode, I talked to Bill Balderaz, who is the president and founder of Futurety, a data analytics and marketing consulting firm, where they help organizations derive insights from data to predict customer behavior and deliver smarter, faster marketing programs. We talked about how organizations that have large amounts of data can create actionable customer profiles to improve engagement and attract new customers. Bill then talked about his early career in venture-backed startups where he gained experience and mentorship that ultimately led him to start his own business. We focused a little on challenges and failures, and he emphasized the importance of market timing and validating ideas before launching. We delved a little into core challenges where Bill identified from clients that data management and data utilization were areas of focus. He then emphasized adapting to a cookieless world, and to do that, you need to focus on first-party data. And finally, we got into market strategy, and we went into how segmentation and persona development are crucial for targeted marketing strategies. I hope you enjoy the episode. So how are you doing today?
I'm great, Tim. Thank you for having me on.
So I'm going to get right into the hard-hitting question about Futurety. You are the founder and owner, obviously. Could you just give everyone just an idea of what you do and what Futurety does?
Sure, absolutely. So at our core, we work with organizations that have a lot of data, and I'm talking terabytes of data, millions of rows of data. Those may be hospitals, healthcare systems, financial institutions, but lots of data and lots of sensitive data. And the core business model on our services side is to take that data, turn those into usable, actionable profiles of either your customers, your voters, your donors, your members, your patients, whoever your audience is, and then help you communicate with those customers better, engage them, attract new ones just like them. The analogy I use and the inspiration was I came from a more traditional marketing background. And about 10 years ago, I saw this move away from hiring the best photographers and graphic designers to hiring the best data people. And I look at inspiration like Netflix and Spotify and Amazon, and Netflix knows what you're going to watch tonight, even though you don't know that, and Amazon knows what you're going to buy, even though you haven't looked at that product yet. And no one looks at those companies as great brands necessarily. They don't say their logos are great, their social media presence is great, no one knows what their taglines are. They win with great data and great customer profiles. And our objective is to bring that same capability to other organizations.
So Bill, being an entrepreneur, right? So have you always started your own companies, or did you have any, experience back in the corporate world? And sort of, if you did, like, what was that aha moment? Like, I want to start my own company.
Yeah, great question. So out of school, I worked for us. This was mid to late 90s, kind of the first .com bubble days. So early days of the internet, early days of, really big valuations, VC investments. So I worked for 4 venture-backed startups in about 8 years. I learned a lot from them. Some cases I learned what not to do, raise a bunch of money and not have a business model and burn through it. Others were very, very great stewards of growth, learned how to scale. So three of my past bosses are good friends, advocates, supporters, mentors to me to this day. But I worked in venture-backed tech startups that had a very specific culture and feeling and ambition that I loved. And I knew pretty early on I wanted to do that for myself. And so at the last one, my boss, a woman by the name of Pam Springer, who's a really successful tech entrepreneur, I went to her and said, I love what I'm doing here, but I want to do even more of it. I was working in social media marketing at the time for the company. And I said, I want to start my own business. And she said, great, we'll be your first client. And so, she showed me that support. I transitioned, I started an agency. I was able to make a few hires. And then ever since then, I've been starting, growing, building my own businesses.
So that's good because usually like my companies, I usually burn bridges for my old companies and lots of some. I'm glad you're keeping up on your people. But you mentioned like Netflix and some others. You always hear about these success stories like Facebook and Uber and these great startups. Since you've started multiple companies, do you have anything that you're sort of your North Star, like, hey, this is what I want my business to be like, or these are challenges that I've had in the past that I want to bring to Futurity to really show that, the path forward?
Sure, absolutely. So to me, the culture and the people I work with as team members, as clients, is the most important, more than money, more than recognition, more than the awards. It's that day to day, because that's where you spend your time, is really with those people. So to me, that's the North Star. Is just, someone once called it the life's too short rule. The life's too short to spend most of your day with people you don't want to be around. So that's the guiding principle. From a success metric, the lesson I learned the hard way was that the market is always right. So no matter how great you think your idea is, no matter how good it looks on a whiteboard, until the market is saying that's what I want to buy from you, it's not a good idea. I had a couple of spectacular failures. One was called Renaissance U, and aside from, no one can spell Renaissance. It's one of those words that, if you ask all your listeners right now, they're all Googling it and maybe saying like,
Bill, I'll put you on the spot. How do you spell Renaissance?
I won't even pretend like I know. So it was a terrible name to begin with, but the idea was to license textbooks online on a way that students could access electronically instead of buying physical copies, which sounds like a wonderful idea, except this was about 4 or 5 years before iPads were invented, and even laptops weren't widespread. So students would have had to access these on big desktop computers back at their dorm room. And publishers, we actually signed a few publishers on board. We launched the company, but adoption was terrible because we were 5 or 6 years too late. I have 2 college age kids now, and they do most of their content electronically. And so we missed that window by many, many years too early. The second was the telehealth venture, very similar. It launched pre-COVID. We all got into telehealth during COVID. It was about 2 or 3 years too early. It's kind of a nuance, but telehealth wasn't reimbursed at the same rate as in-person visits. Most insurance companies didn't cover it. So it was, if I'd started about 2 or 3 years later, I'd probably be sitting on a beach somewhere, but the market timing was just way off. And so what I've learned now is I will go out and validate an idea, not with a focus group or with a survey, but say, Tim, will you buy this for me? I'm going to start a data company, and you are a CEO at Tim Memorial Hospital. Will you let me, if I can start a company, will you sign a contract with me to let me work with your data and draw patient insights? And if you say yes, I'm going to go start that company. But I really wait till you have that market validation before you make that leap.
And that's important that you say that, because even in a big corporation, like when I was at TransUnion and some big companies, we would always try to focus, and even what I'm doing currently is like, make sure that marketing is not creating a product in a vacuum or creating that interest in a vacuum. And make sure you're going out to the sales rep and saying, hey, if we build this, can you sell
Right.
it? Because if the answer is no, and they're like, wait a second, doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like, okay, we need to take a step back. But back when, so you had a couple failures. So what was the aha moment for Futurity where you're like, oh, this is a great idea, and bring it to market?
Yep, absolutely. So it's interesting. The reason the name and the tagline are deliberately vague is because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had exited a couple of companies. I bought the domain. I got an office, and I was trying to figure out what the company was. And I just did a lot of meetings. I met with all my past clients, primarily and sat down with them and said, what, because they liked me, they trusted me, they knew I would deliver. And I said, what's the biggest problem you face right now? And the reinforcement was, we have a lot of data. It doesn't talk to each other. It's not normalized. It's not engineered properly. And this was 10 years ago. This was 2014. So it's easy now to say, I'll just put everything into a chat GPT or some kind of generative AI engine and you can normalize it. 10 years ago, this was stuff just didn't talk to each other. And so we, got made a living, the first client is still with us today, 10 years later. But, she said, here's the problem. We're a global brand. We've got, multiple subdivisions. We know we have some cross buyer segmentation going on, but we don't know exactly what that is. And so she gave us access to work with their data. We put it all together. We made it sing. They can make decisions off it. They have an executive level dashboard. And now we had a great reference. And then we went out to others and took that. But it was really just lots of shoe leather, going out, meeting with people that are decision makers and say, what's the problem none of your vendors are solving for you today? And then build a business around that.
There's a lot there, because I think it's pretty crazy that you bought the domain name, like you open for business, but you don't really have business. Like when you were going out to all these different companies and say, hey, what's your challenge? Was the theme data, like it's more specific you can get, or, data solves the world's biggest challenges? Or was it that one potential customer or client that said, this is our problem? Or did you keep on hearing it over and over again?
Kept hearing it over and over. This was just the first one that said, I will write that check. And then I'm a failed journalist. I took statistics pass fail in college. So I am not the one that can work with your data, but I know how to recruit and train and develop a great team. And I live about 3 miles from, I think, the second largest university in the country, Ohio State University. So the initial version was essentially me recruiting really smart, master's and PhD level students in statistics and analytics and data to fulfill those first contracts until we could build our full-time team about 2 or 3 years later. But the theme was consistent. It was around data. It was reinforced. Once that first check was written, I was able to build the team, and then more deals started closing.
So, Bill, were you surprised when you heard that data was a challenge, or was it just more validation? And before you answer that, because I think I bring it up on every podcast or episode, that it's the same theme. Businesses are still having problems with their data and what to do with it, and identity resolution. And it seems foundational. So, but even 2014, you're still hearing it.
Right. At more than ever, as we grow and we talk to new clients. So initially our clients were this nucleus of people that I knew well, that were geographically close past clients. Now our universe is this big, and absolutely still hearing that. I honestly, I was probably largely unaware. Like I'd been more on the creative and social media and digital side of marketing, and then doing more consulting in healthcare. So I didn't know how big the problem was until I started having those conversations, which I would encourage. If our clients had said, office furniture is terrible, we need someone that can figure out how to make the office furniture experience better, I'd say, great, I'm going to go build a business doing that. So it was really just I love business. I love owning businesses. I love building businesses. I love developing teams. I love working with clients. And especially at that time, if they had said data, or if they had said furniture, if they had said, robotic vacuum cleaners, I would have said, as long as the numbers work, I want to build that business. Now, of course, I'm in love with data, and I listen to podcasts about data, and I read about data, and I go to all the conferences. So now that I'm in it, I've thrown myself fully into it. But at the time, I went in with no preconcept. I wasn't having a hypothesis of what they say the problem would be. I went in as a blank slate and said, I'm not going to influence you at all. Tell me, Tim, what your biggest problem is, and then I'm going to go build a company to fix it.
So when they give you the answer to that question, is it data and then they have siloed, or, it doesn't speak to each other, or we've got, misalignment, or we don't have the attributes, identity or psychographics, or we've got a cookies problem? Like what specifically about data was their challenges?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of my contacts were, some senior level folks. And so their biggest challenge was really simple. We're not using data to make decisions. And then you dig a level. Well, why not? Well, we don't have the right accesses. The managers maybe are telling you that. And then you go the next level in the hierarchy and said, well, we we can't give you the accesses because right now that's engineered. We're pulling data from 20 different sources. And we don't know if it's Tim, if it's Timothy, if it's Bill or William or Willie. So we don't know. The data is just not clean and consistent. And then you go deeper and say, oh, and if we could append the data with more customer attributes, we could talk about social determinants of health. We don't have that. So it's overused, but it's peeling back the onion. Your C-level folks, your VPs, their problem is going to be defined as we're not using data effectively and we're spending a lot of time and money gathering it. When you get to the point of the folks that are hands-on, they're going to mention all the stuff you say. It's not engineered properly. It's not secured properly. It doesn't talk to each other. It can't be visualized. It's not appended. There's no identity resolution. They're going to have that specifics. Most C-level and VP folks are thinking just in a different way than the folks that are hands-on with the data are.
I get exactly what you're saying, but what I'm hearing is, I know you've got a great solution, but were you going up against other competitors in the marketplace that said they can do the same thing? Or because someone has to be falling down and saying they're not getting the data to the providers or the companies the way they need it. So what's your value prop versus competition?
Sure. Right. There's really two sets of competition. So one are your big, your big 5, your big 10 global consulting firms. And I love we competing against them because one is just such a thrill to your ego and the morale of the team. It's like, oh my gosh, I won't name the names, but you know who they are. We're going against them again. And, we win sometimes. So that feels really good to be able to do that. Our value proposition there is just lower overhead, much more efficient, much faster. So if you're going with a big global consulting firm, the project kickoff time, the amount of team members that are flown in, all that stuff, there's just a lot of overhead. A lot of our clients are just come in and solve the problem. And so we can do that. And if they have a problem, you talk to the president and the joke about, you won't get our B team because we don't have a B team, but you get the same people that pitch you on the product and do the discovery, do the work, versus they bring in all the Ivy League MBAs to do the pitch. And then you're getting the work done by interns. We come in with that focus. When we compete against more smaller or niche players, our big differentiator, and I hope they're not listening, is that we can work with regulated data. So when it comes to data, there's a lot of people that want to touch retail data and e-commerce and stuff that they can do from a coffee shop, or their team can be remote and they can hire, maybe less experienced folks. For us, we're going through SOC 2 compliance. We are HIPAA certified. We're in the office. The networks are locked down and secured. We've got cameras in all the public areas. Everyone's background checked. And if you're giving over patient data or banking data, you don't want someone that's going to be working from their home and their kitchen table when their neighbors are walking in and their husband walks in and their kids are on the same laptop playing Roblox. Like, you don't want that. So our big differentiator there is there's not a lot of companies. It's a very, very small list of companies that should be handling patient or financial data, and we work heavily in regulated industries.
That's interesting. What was it called again? Roblox? Is that a game I should be playing?
Exactly. Yes, I have an 11-year-old, and that's what she spends a lot of time doing. So, but if your data analyst is working from home and they step away from the computer and the kid jumps on, well, now you've got 500,000 patient records that an 11-year-old is accidentally pasted into a screen on the game she's playing. So Bill, we eliminate that risk.
You started the company. You didn't really know what you were doing. Now you're in it. You love data and you're having all these level conversations. Is there a next step, or what are you hearing now that maybe there's like Futurety 2 or a new company that you've got an idea? And you don't have to give away any secrets, but what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have big plans. So I won't talk about AI because everyone else is, or I'll try not to talk too much about it. Obviously, it's changing the way data moves, what you can do with data, how quickly you can analyze large blocks of data into narratives. That's all out there. I'm sure every other guest has talked about that. What we're looking at now is, today we are a really good professional services and consulting firm with a product called Huckle that's built on your data set, the Veriskin Futur data set. What we're seeing is we're very quickly becoming a software company that has professional services wrapped around it. So what we've now automated with Huckle, our software platform, is something that would have taken quite literally weeks or months to do, with consumer identity, data appending, and then turning that into a CRM campaign or a Facebook or Meta campaign or Google ads. That was literally in a best case scenario, maybe an 8 or 12-week program. Today, if you are a hospital system or you are a bank or you are a retailer and you put 1 million records in Huckle today, you're running campaigns by tomorrow. I mean, it is, we've cut that down, that lag time down to almost nothing. And so now as we continue to look at a cookieless world, as you know, the data here is based on first party data and data appending. So now we're no longer relying on cookies, the advanced segmentation we can do, true one-on-one marketing. I can deliver messaging to you based on lifestyle, demographics, psychographics, the channel you live in. All that stuff is just so powerful that we're seeing this huge gap emerge from companies that did it the old way and companies that are relying on tools like Huckle, what we're doing. And our clients are telling us they're pulling away from their competition. So we're really going in on building out those feature sets. Yeah.
So Bill, it's not a secret that we work together. That's one of the reasons why I wanted Johnny. I was so impressed.
Yeah,
I was so
absolutely.
impressed with your story. But just to make sure, and you talked about it, but I want to make sure everyone knows that about your consumer identity platform. It's called Huckle. And people are probably trying to think of like, what does Huckle stand for? It must be some super important thing. Could you just give us a little story about where Huckle came from?
Sure. So I'll give you the fake one first.
Okay.
And that, we say it stands for the human understanding of consumer knowledge, lifestyle, engagement. I think I think I got all the letters there. The true story is we were all around a whiteboard and years ago trying to come up with a name. And we came up with a lot of the names that you see, PeopleSoft, Identity True, all the stuff that feels very, mid 1990s, two capital letters type of names. And at the time, my daughter, who was probably 6 or 7 years old, her pet cat is Huckle from the Richard Scarry Busy Town books. He was named. We still have the cat. And so one of the very few words she could write at that age was his name, and she loves this cat to this day. And so in the corner of the whiteboard, she just wrote Huckle, 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 because we're very family friendly. In fact, I think there's 3 kids and a dog here today. So because we're in office, people bring their kids, people bring their pets. So we're more like a house than an office sometimes. So my daughters are here a lot. And so she's writing Huckle, Huckle, Huckle. And finally, one of our analysts looks down and he says, there's the name, it's Huckle. And I check and the trademark's available and the URL's available. And so the product became Huckle. And now it's great when I hear clients talk about, they use it like Google now, like a verb, like, hey, we just had 1,000 new customers today. Does anybody Huckle those yet? And so now it's, this little, 10-pound cat we have at home now has become an industry term.
Yeah. And I got in trouble because I was doing research for this podcast. I'm like, let me do some research on Huckle. And once you get in there and you dive into Busy Town, and like your whole like childhood comes back, and like people are walking by my desk like, hey, Tim, working hard there on Busy Town. So I love that.
Yeah,
stuff.
but it's work. It's market research. Absolutely.
Remember the name. Like if it was those PeopleSoft or Micro Firm or what, it's like no one's going to remember it. So it's great. That's great marketing to do something like that.
Thank you. I appreciate
so as
that.
we sort of, I did want to have your opinion on a couple things. Like when you talk about Huckle, what it does with consumer identity, and you had mentioned advanced segmentation and personas. Can you just talk about in general the importance of those two things?
Sure, absolutely. So we've got, let's say you have a client that's got some pretty diverse market sets. So maybe you have a segment of a product that's serving families with young kids, might be one segment. That same product may be serving athletes, it's a hydration product. That same product may be serving blue collar workers who are drinking this on the job. So you have like a bunch of different market segments. And if I'm marketing to them all the same, I'm going to miss, 80% of my market with every email or with every ad that I post. But now if I go into Huckle and say, oh, okay, here's 1 million customers. Of those, there's a really big segment of young families, married people, kids early stage, medium level income. So for them, I'm going to be on Facebook, I'm going to be on Instagram, I'm going to offer coupons and discounts. They prefer online shopping, they're on iPhone, so I got to have a strong mobile presence. That audience I'm serving that way. Here's an audience of emerging young retirees. They're empty nesters, they have high disposable income, and wow, they like to donate to charity. They're extremely giving. So I'm going to run a buy one, give one campaign to them because that's super important. And it's November's coming up. It's Veterans Day. I wonder if anyone on my data set is veterans. Click the veterans tab and Huckle. You don't have to ask them. You never have to say it's Tim, did Tim serve or not. You click the veterans tab. It's like, oh, here's all the households with the veteran in. We're going to send a Veterans Day email to that audience. It's July here, or it's almost July here in Ohio. It's hot. I'm a healthcare system. I'm going to promote pool safety. If you're a family without kids in a pool, that won't mean anything. But I'm going to segment, have a pool, has young kids at home. Here's my 15,197 patients that have young kids in the home and a pool, and I'm going to talk to them about pool safety. When you get we're all flooded with marketing. We're all flooded with emails, robocalls, social media ads. If I am a parent with young children in a pool and it's hot out and they're swimming, and my healthcare system sends me a text saying, Bill, here are the top 3 pool safety tips as we near 100 degrees in Columbus, I'm going to click that. If I get something that says, Bill, it's Medicare enrollment time, and I'm, not quite there yet, I'm not going to click that. But that same healthcare system can say over 65 and in this zip code, and just send them the Medicare message. Just send me the pool safety one. The results we are getting in terms of conversion and engagement and acquisition are it's astounding. It's amazing because we're talking to Tim because we know 300 data points about Tim, and that message is going to resonate with exactly what you need.
I thank you for giving. I love that story because it's easier to market to someone if you know who you're marketing to and you know what they like. We just had some interns start here, and I was telling the story of your addressable market is over what's the U.S. population? Over 250, 260.
Right. 260 or so million. Yeah.
Right. But then if you start narrowing it down to, I was giving the insurance example of people who own a home, people who own a home that are married, people who own a home that are married that have children. And then you keep on going down, and it's like, oh, I can talk to them how they want to be talked to. And it's not being creepy. It's just knowing how to market to them. So
absolutely. Right. It's relevancy. None of us want an irrelevant. Marketing's part of our world as a consumer. Do you want an irrelevant conversation, ad, phone call, or do you want something that's going to help you today? Netflix, Spotify, Amazon have proven you want stuff that's going to help you today.
And speaking of today, Bill, thank you for being here today. You're a great partner. You're a great guest. And I think I'm going to have you on again. You gave us some really good knowledge.
Excellent. Great. Well, yeah, we'll come back in a year, a few months, and we'll tell you all the great stuff we're doing with Huckle then.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Marketing Rapport. This show is brought to you by Verisk Marketing Solutions, an organization created to help CMOs and their partners improve the reach, timing, relevance, and compliance of every consumer engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Rapport wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the show notes for more information.